TGA Nation, we are back. Alas, it has been a long time. We've missed you all. We needed a draft in our lives. We took a break over the winter with some of those JV freshman tournaments, and now we are back, and we have a fun one ahead. And of course, when we come back for the draft this season, we're coming back with the big guns. We have now signed on this season with Roto Baller. We want to bring you guys the very best. We're stepping up our game. We're stepping up our draft. We want to step it up for you guys with Roto Baller. We're bringing you guys a lot this year. Not just the show that we always bring you, but there's a lot of additional content we're bringing you because we're gearing up for a huge season. We're going to make a lot of money this year. DFS, we're going to make a lot of money betting. And our fearless leader, Spencer, is leading the way. It is not just going to be the two of us this year. It is going to be a whole Roto Baller crew crushing the golf season this season. Brian England, welcome back to the draft. Courtney, we've missed you all. We are stoked for tonight. Spence, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Joel. I as you said, it's this has been something that I have been specifically talking about with Roto Baller for the last few years. I feel like this show fits in really well on the network, and we've had a lot of great additions. And the person under me right now, Patrick Gates, this was I was very happy to get Patrick over to the Roto Baller team when I put out the feeler to try to see what everybody, the interest, engage all of that. Patrick's stuff really stood out to me. He's a great writer. He's great on podcasts. I'm really honored to have him on as our first guest tonight. And I'll let Patrick in a second talk about all the stuff that he's doing for us, but really happy to have this on the Roto Baller network moving forward.
Yeah. Appreciate the introduction there. I'm happy to be a part of the Roto Baller team this year. Happy to bring my kind of giant article that I've done, I think the past, 3 years, all-encompassing over to the Roto Baller network. So super excited about that. Got a little picks article as well. So just excited to be a part of the team and kind of get to absorb some of the great content that everyone puts out there. So looking forward to a great season.
I'm excited to have you on, Patrick. If you follow Patrick, his content's aces. If you're just following him alone, you're going to win some more money this year just by seeing who he's picking and who he's playing. But I will say, some people, the background rumors are accusing us of having a little Jake Paul to us. Because Patrick, if you will follow Patrick, you're going to win bets. I mean, he's an expert in the betting market. Maybe not as much of a DFS player. So they're saying we're bringing in bettors to the draft game because we can't beat the DFS plays. It's not true. We're bringing in the experts to give you guys the best plays to make money. And that's why Patrick's on drafted with us tonight in what's going to be a very fun, very exciting draft. Spence, you got your work cut out for you this week. We're going out to California. We're going to La Quinta. The problem is we got 3 courses we're going to be on. So there's not going to be a lot of consistency. The one thing we do know, it is going to be pretty easy. You're going to need to get a lot of birdies this week to win. Other than that, what are you looking for out there on the courses in California?
Yeah, you talked about it. PGA West Stadium course, La Quinta, Nicholas Tournament track. The field's going to be required to take on that 3-course rotation between Thursday and Saturday. That's highlighted by this very abnormal 54-hole cut. And then this Pro-Am format that's going to prolong rounds for the entire day. From there, we do get a little bit of consistency back into the mix. The top 65 players and ties who make that final day on Sunday will head back to the PGA West Stadium course. I do think from a handicapping perspective or modeling, that does help a little bit to at least figure out where we're going to inevitably end on Sunday. But for me, and I probably say this every year, Joel, I feel like this is, I don't know what we're at this point, 4 or 5 years together doing this show. It's been quite a bit of time. I feel like every time we get to this track, my problem just comes down to the model building dilemma that comes into the mix with it. 2 of the courses, they don't have stat tracker. And for me, as somebody who is very data driven, that is the most complex way and route for me to not be able to maneuver through the process. So if you are looking at this, last year, new greens and bunkers were installed at PGA West. That increased the difficulty by quite a bit. I wrote this in my Roto Baller article. It's currently in the premium article behind the paywall, but I will drop these stats because I think it's important to note. So these are the average scores per day for all 3 tracks pre-renovation. PGA West, which is the one that gets played twice, minus 1.98. Nicholas was minus 2.55. La Quinta, 2.86. Post renovation last year, PGA West went all the way from minus 1.98 to minus 0.58. Nicholas up to 3.41, La Quinta to 3.74. For showdown contests, I know we're doing a week-long draft here. For season-long contests, I would not get cute. There's really no reason whatsoever for why you should have somebody on a PGA West course. There's not a 3-shot disadvantage that anybody's going to be able to make up from that. I don't think from a game theory perspective it makes sense. You mentioned it at the very start of it, Joel. At least if there is any sort of semblance that we can look at of consistency, all 3 of these courses are short par 72 properties. They deliver par 5 scoring potential. And for me, one of the things that I tried to look at, I know a lot of people in the space have talked about accuracy in general not being something that's important. And I understand in theory when you look at this, miscut penalties are not very high. But the one thing I did notice, you get a ton of shots from 125 yards and in. Nearly 30% of your shots at the PGA West Stadium course will land there. When you are inside of the fairway, that birdie percentage goes way up. So I still think that it is advantageous to have a little bit of accuracy to your game. I'm trying to find birdie makers from that distance, and I'm kind of trying to get around whatever this wonky setup is of not having stat tracker at the other 2 and knowing that it's an all-out dash on 2 of the days and a little bit of kind of just maintain your stuff on the 3rd.
Oh, all right. Well, there you have it. We do have a draft tonight. Before I dive into it, I want to just thank some of our regulars, people who've been drafting with us for years. You guys have tuned back in night 1. We are stoked to be back and drafting with you guys. Courtney Harden, Brian England, Rat Pack 75. Thank you all for your loyalty to the show. We want one of you guys to be the audience captain tonight. First person to volunteer, basically say anything, say I'll be the captain. Then you're the captain now, right? And so it's going to be your show. You'll lead the audience draft, but it'll be the same rules that always apply. In case you're new to the King of the Draft show and the format that we play, I'll give you guys a quick rundown of how this draft is going to work. Courtney, Brian, Ratbacker, anyone else who's listening, you can all participate in the chat here on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, get in the chat. You are drafting a team along with us. There will be 4 teams drafted tonight. We draft snake style, like your typical fantasy football draft. Person who goes first, second, third, fourth, and then the person who goes fourth has 2 in a row, and we go back in the snake. The big caveat here is you do need to actually be able to afford your lineup. So you can't just take all the best players. You need to make sure you can actually afford your lineup on DraftKings. So you got to draft from each tier and make sure you have plays at each and each of the different tiers that you're ready to draft as we go through. Courtney, thank you for volunteering. You get to put the captain's badge on and guide the audience through this draft. Because we're starting fresh this season, we picked the order for night 1. It's going to be Spencer, myself. Patrick's going to go third. Audience, you are in the 4th spot. So, Courtney, you'll get 2 in a row on the hook. The way it works is everyone who is listening, put a nomination in. So when the audience is turn to pick, get into the chat, say who you want to be drafted. When you put a nomination in, that person is eligible to be picked. When a second person nominates or says that golfer's name, that is the audience's pick. So that just means 2 mentions of a golfer. When it's the audience's pick, that's your pick. You lock it in. Because Courtney's the captain, he's going to steer you guys. So if he likes one of the nominations, he can just second it. That's your pick. If we're slow or we're not sure, you're having trouble coming to an agreement on who to pick, that's where Courtney will step up and make sure that you guys have a competitive squad. All right, Spencer, you wanted the first pick tonight. We gave it to you. Without further ado, you're on the clock.
Oh, Joel, nobody can ever say that we're not competitive. I did ask for the first pick. We gave you the second pick, the audience last year. One of the things I will say before I get into this selection, and I've kind of teased this a little bit inside of the Rotoballer Discord, I've kind of run this by you, Joel. This is going to be something that we're doing live on air, though, for the most part. I think we should have a punishment wheel for the person who comes in last place. And that's something that I want everybody to enter into the chat this week, into the YouTube chat. Tell us what you would like the punishments to be. These are not things that we're going to do outside of a draft. Like, I'm not going to go sit in an IHOP for 24 hours and eat pancakes all day. These are things where you cannot draft a player $9,000 and up in your next lineup. You have to draft 2 players $6,000 in that range. Like, it has to be in that territory there. I think that's something that will be fun to add to this show, add a little bit of chaos to the mix. We can pick the best, we'll say 6 every single week. We'll spin a wheel live on air. We'll figure out what the punishment is. Nobody will get the prep for it. So that's the first thing about that. When it gets to my actual pick here, I will ask you this question, Joel. I'm very curious because I feel like we have played the Scotty Scheffler game for so long now to where we have discussed what is a proper price from him, what would we actually be willing to pay, and at what point is it too much? If you look here at this price tag at $14,200, fair to you, too high, still too low? What is your opinion on this?
So I think one of the biggest factors now when we start dissecting Scotty each week in that crazy price tag is the rest of the field, right? If it's a loaded field, a major-like field, even though he's the best at every tournament, I'm more likely to fade him because I feel like I can still get 4 to 5 B+ to star quality players in my lineup. If it's a little bit more of a watered down field, which I think this week is a little bit in between. Like I don't think it's a JV tournament, but it's definitely not a star-studded tournament. You know, Scotty's at the top. There's probably 5 to 8 more, B to B+ tier guys, and then after that, there's a bit of a fall off. In a tournament like this, I do think Scotty is that much better than the field. There's just not that many guys that are kind of on his level. Personally, even though I think Cantlay could play well this week, in a major week, Cantlay might be in the 7K range this year based on how he performed last year. So that's what we're talking as the second highest priced golfer in the field. 14 is a lot to spend, but there are plenty of guys down there in that low 7K range that I think you can get and put a pretty competitive team with Scotty. So I'd be willing to pay up.
That is what I'm going to do to start this. This is kind of my opinion with this more so than anything. That's kind of what I was going to go into. You get 3 rounds out of every single player. And I understand at the end of the day, you still need to find yourself getting 6 to 6 through. And that runs a problem if you do not. However, that course that goes back around on Sunday, it is the most difficult of the group. It's a little bit more challenging to put the pieces together for any of these players to begin with. So I think when you look at what this field is from top to bottom, there's a lot of players $7,000 and less. That makes sense. I would be very cognizant of the fact of how I am building with Scotty because you are going to get yourself into potential spots where you could get your lineup duped. There's only so many routes you can go when somebody's $14,200 and your average starting point is 7-1, give or take at that position. But I think Scotty here is somebody that, look, you can go either direction. I understand that there's the Siwoo, Ben Griffins, all those names in the 9 to upper or lower 10,000s there. That makes sense. But I'm going to go with Scotty Scheffler here. If there's any pushback and any drawback to this selection, we do know that Scotty gets his advantage when you put him on a course where he can use that skill set for 4 days. He hits that shot over and over and over again. That's not what you get here. Maybe that's why we've seen limited course history. That is what you would want. But I just think that when you have a golfer who's 3-1, who's minus 400 in every single matchup, it makes a lot of sense to put Scotty into a lineup still.
So for the record, before we went on air, I asked Spence if he was going to take Scotty, and he made it seem like he wasn't. And I was like, all right, good. You can have the pick. We'll move on. And he duped me. He slow played me so that he could get the first pick and take Scotty and put me behind the ball. Listen, at the end of the day, Spence, that's just good strategy. That's what I would do too if I was in your shoes. So I can't knock you for it.
I will say this. We have a witness here in Patrick. I would be curious what Patrick's take was. I was pretty sure I said I would most likely take Scotty in this spot. Maybe I'm misremembering this from a gamesmanship perspective, but I'm pretty sure I said I would probably take Scotty.
If I was a betting man, which I am, I would have guessed Spencer would have taken Scotty Scheffler. I would have said it was kind of leaning more towards that side of things. I have a question for you guys. I'm kind of new to the DFS world here, so I might play just like maybe the chat tonight of just ask questions. When you see Scheffler at this 1,400 price point, is it now sort of kind of more advantageous to play him in these tournaments at this price with kind of a weaker field? Or when you guys, let's go to some of the bigger tournaments, some signature events coming up, some stronger fields, the majors, him at this price, is that kind of more of the time that you want to play him?
It's a good question, Patrick. I'll start here, and I'll really get Spencer's take too. The issue that we're getting with Scotty is typically what happened is if you had put Scotty at this price point 2.5 years ago, his ownership would have been like 10% or maybe less. And at that ownership, I would have, if you like Scotty as great as he is, you play it because, it's not that high of ownership and you can get a lineup in there that's competitive around it. He's been so good and dominant that now he's coming in at 14,000 price tag and he's coming in at over 30% ownership, which is heavy for a guy who's got that heavy of a price tag. So I think that's the bigger factor is looking at that ownership number. Now, obviously, we're speculating. We have some data that we look at to get the ownership, but it's not exact science. We won't know for sure until it goes off. But for what we've seen in the last year or so, even with these crazy price tags, his ownership has been very high. Now, with that being said, he's been winning crazy amounts of tournaments even with the ownership. So if you went every week and didn't play him, you lost all those weeks that he went out and won the tournament. So that's not to say you will fail him because he can win every tournament, but that's what the bigger factor is, what that ownership percentage looks like.
Yeah, I was looking into it the other day too, of his kind of first 5 tournaments to start the season, and he hasn't necessarily won those the past 2 years that we've kind of known him to be this dominant player and kind of game breaker. So my strategy going into this at least was to start off of avoiding Scheffler at this point and just hoping that all that ownership continues to stay on him and just trying to find some of those 9 and 800 or 8,000 guys. But it's he's clearly the best player in this field by far.
That's a good point. Maybe it is. Maybe he's not as strong on this initial California swing, and maybe you get a little bit of an edge to kind of fade him early in the season until he picks up steam. And we know he's going to get there. He's going to be dominant. But you find if you find it like if Scotty Scheffler gets 15th, then playing him at 30% at 1,400 is a bad play. 15th for anyone else would be good, but him. So that's the kind of thing you got to weigh when you're making these decisions. Spence, what about you on the $1,400 price tag? Is that a deterrent in terms of field and big GPP plays?
I wish he would have. I know Hank said he's too high. I wish he would have been higher. I think the problem is you still have 40% of people that are actively trying to use him. If you put him at, and I don't know, this is trial and error here with DraftKings. Like we're reaching territories where we've never gotten on price points here. I don't know if that's the high 14s. I don't know if that's 15,000. At some moment, you price it out completely to where you can even play a lineup with Scotty Scheffler. But maybe that's almost what needs to be done if we're going to have 41% of builds, give or take, that are going to go down this route. I think he's too cheap based off of that reason. To answer Patrick's question, the two things I would be looking for is I would be looking at what contest am I entering. For me, in some of these large field GPPs, it's probably less advantageous that I would want to go down the Scotty route. Doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily fade him, but in single entry, I'm probably rostering Scotty in most of these spots and using what I believe my model can find from a price point from 7,500 and less, and trying to pick off a lot of these players that are values for me. And this week in particular, there are quite a few names that I deem to be a value on the slate. So this particular event with this particular field, with this particular setup, with it being a 54-hole cut, pushed me in the direction that I wanted to start with Scotty Scheffler here. And it's hard for me to argue. I know a site like Data Golf, whether they are right or wrong in this answer, they still at 14,200 have them as the most profitable DFS play. I don't know if I necessarily would go that strong with it. What I would say to that, though, is if you believe that there's value under that 7,500 mark, all of a sudden the playability for Scotty does make a lot of sense. And for me, there are enough names that I want to play.
Ooh, all right. Well, there you have it. Well, we have a long draft here to see what those value plays look like and how you'll round that squad out. With the second pick, I am happy to where this gets me, and we'll see how it goes. But I have a feeling with my first pick here, this is going to end up being a my guy. I mean, he probably already is a my guy, but this season especially, I am a big fan of Bobby McIntyre. He's just playing great. I mean, you can't turn away from how well he just form. And the reason I say that, I actually discount form for a majority of the golfers in this field. Guys who really haven't played since November, October because of taking some time off. It's hard to say, oh, they're in good form, right? It's been a couple months since they teed off. But Bobby's been playing over in Europe, and he's been playing on the World Tour. He hasn't been necessarily off as long as some of these guys. So I would say more than most of the others, he's more in form. He played a couple more tournaments, and they've been great results. Even last week in Hawaii, he gave you T4. And what I like most about that is that he gained on his approach. He's gaining with his irons. We know his short game is great. His putter is great. If he's striking the ball well, he can be very dangerous. I think Bobby McIntyre is going to be a top 10 player on tour this year. It's going to have, last year was his breakout season. I think that he improves upon that this year. At 9,400, I love me some Robert McIntyre. Patrick, you're up with your first pick. Before we get to that, I would love to get your take on Robert McIntyre.
Yeah, what's not to like about McIntyre? Kind of like what you mentioned before. I had him in that range too, of that 9,400. Like I said, finished the season strong last year, continued that onto the DP World Tour, played well at the Hero, and then this season started us off T4 in the Sony, gained strokes in every key category that you want. And the Amex is a weird tournament, right? Because on some of the past winners, you're like, course history matters. Other times it doesn't. Does off the tee play. We've seen bombers win. We've seen plotters win, right? It's not necessarily one of those tournaments where you go into it with the model being set of like, all right, here are my key stats for the week that I'm extremely confident in. This tournament with a 3-course rotation and just the amount of variables in terms of winners, skill sets that we've seen in the past 5-6 years, right? It seems like it's very open this week of if you have a guy that you like, take him. Don't let anyone talk you off of him. This is a week where if you have an inclination on anyone on the board, just take him because we've seen these long shots come in. Yes, this is a stronger field this year than we've seen historically. So do you factor that in of, hey, maybe one of the top guys do win it this year and it's not a long shot like we've seen in the past? There's so many variables with this event. Take who you like and don't let anyone really try to talk you off. That's kind of my one thing this week of there's no bad picks, right? Because you just don't know, especially with this tournament. So
are you taking Vijay Singh here with your first pick?
I am not. I am not. That is tempting for sure. Maybe I was even thinking Michael Block too. Why not? If we're going to go on the VJ road, just take Michael Block as well. No, I'm going to go with Harry Hall as my first pick at 9,300. Last week, so I'm struggling right now because Fantasy National is currently transferring over to a new site. So there's just no information. I had all my research done. I was ready to go for the show, excited, and Fantasy National decides to just shut off. So I'm kind of flying a little bit blind here. But Harry Hall last week, T6, impressive in every category. You were kind of concerned going into his end of the year on the DP World Tour, missed the cut at the FedEx Open France, the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship, struggled with that as well after kind of a great finish to the season. Rebounded last week, looked great at 9,300. I think this is a steal, especially given the fact that he finished T21 last year, and the main issue was his play off the tee, right? Struggled accuracy-wise. Going back to his past few tournaments, he's addressed that issue. I think if he continues to putt well here, which he's done his past 2 times, or 2 of the last 3 times, I think he's a value play at 9,300.
I love the Harry Hall pick. He was someone I was considering at my pick there at number 2. He's a guy who really came on strong at the end of last year, and that form showed that it was still holding true last week at the Sony Open with his T6. An easy course where you have to get a lot of birdies, and he's going to roll in a lot of putts. I think he gets another good result this week. Audience, great job getting some nominations in. It looks like at least one pick is locked in. We'll wait on that second. While we wait, Spencer, we'd love to get your take on Harry Hall.
Might be a wild take with my lineup construction, starting with Scotty, but I was actually going to take Harry Hall if he had fallen to me and was going to build this superstars and scrubs. I think what Patrick talked about is very noteworthy here. And when you look at that Hall profile, one of the things that we had not gotten from him, you always get some of those spike putting returns. You sometimes get that birdie making potential, but you don't necessarily see him put it together tee to green as much as he did last week. And those Sunday scaries, which is what I call them in my rotoballer, definitely kind of came back into play for him ever so slightly. But if you look at it entering Sunday, there were 3 players in my model that had gained 0.50 strokes per round in all 4 of the critical strokes gain metrics at the Sony. Chris Goddard as the winner was one of them. Adam Svensson, who continues to just implode on Sundays anytime he's within the top 10 or 15 of the leaderboard. Talk about Sunday scaries. I have wagers I could talk about with him where he entered, I had top 40s on him, where he entered Sunday inside of that top 10 and he shot 80s to not get into that range. And he kind of sort of did that again. I had a matchup with him on Sunday that was nowhere near getting across the finish line. And then Harry Hall was the third name there. If you want to talk about any of the proximity metrics that I spoke of at the beginning, from proximity within 125 yards, nearly 30% of second shots come there. He is the number 1 birdie maker from that range. He's a desert golfer from UNLV. I'm always going to shout out UNLV guys when I get the ability to. Over that shoulder, I have all my UNLV stuff. Tarkanian up there, Vegas Vic. Harry Hall is a very good pick this week.
Boom. Lock it in. Harry Hall, endorsed by all. They didn't mean to rhyme that, but I did hear it. Audience, great job. It looks like the 2 picks are in. Griffin and Siwoo. I can assure you, both of them were not getting back to you guys. So I would have scooped up either one if they got back to me. Not that I expected either one to, but I think that's a really solid turn here by Team Audience. I like both picks. I would have actually hoped to have landed one of the 2 on my next pick. Spence, let's go to you on this one. Are you interested in either or both of Ben Griffin and Siwoo Kim this week?
Couldn't have afforded Griffin with my start. I talked about this last week that I thought Henley was about a 4% implied advantage over Griffin at the Sony Open when it came to win probability. That's not the case this week. They are very similar in my model. And I think if you just look from a pure safety perspective, Ben Griffin makes a lot of sense. The irons will have to be a little bit better, but we saw them pick up on the weekend. And then, there's a real world where if either I decided not to pick Scotty, maybe if I would have played this a little bit differently, if I had the last pick, I would have liked Siwoo. There was this rogue number on DraftKings at 50-1 that entered. I have proper at 39-1. So I think any of the current prices in the market are not necessarily as great at this moment, but Siwoo was a ball striking savant last week. It's always going to come down to the putter for him. He can't lose 4.5 strokes and find that high end upside. But I think at $9,000, I think there's a ton of playability around him. And I will make a very bold take here. I think how people, and maybe this is what I would have done in mine, and maybe it's better that I don't go this route to be unique. I think more people than would be anticipated are going to find a way to start Scotty and Siwoo and just live down in that $6,000 section to round out a build. So for me, not being able to do that now, I think it makes a more interesting show, if nothing else, but really like the audience's picks.
Boom. All right. We're off to a hot start here with this draft. Patrick, you got Harry Hall. It's been Griffin and Siwoo off the board. Who are you eyeing here with your second pick?
Yeah, both were on my short list as well. So great picks. I struggle. I have a ticket on him outright this week, and I struggled kind of coming to this player this week. I'm going to go with the defending champion, Sepp Straka here, right? Was he like my number 1 play on my card this week? Wrote him down, like circled him, tried to get a bet in early Monday morning? No, but after going through kind of the underlying metrics of him with his approach game, with the spike putting, with the wedges, everything lined up that he had to be on my card this week. And so at 9,200, he's going to be in my DFS lineup as well. Third in the Hero, looks great. Won the Amex last year, like I mentioned. It's an interesting pick, but I really like Sepp Straka this week, especially in his terms of his outright a number as well at I think it was 50-1 or 30. What did I get him at? Yeah, 45-1. So I think the number is too good to pass up. That's what I'm going with this week.
I love Sepp Straka. I thought I was going to get him here with my next pick, so it definitely is a steal. I think that's a solid pick. What we saw from Straka last week, a lot of similarities, probably more so even than Bobby McIntyre. He really came on, became an upper tier golfer last season. I do believe he's going to carry that over to this season and be I'm gonna have another really great, strong season. Probably be a top 20 guy on tour. Spence, would love to get your take on Sepp Straka this week.
Joel, some things never change for me. I consistently seem to back myself into a corner when I give myself the number one pick. Nothing ever seems to go in the right direction with it. I like the Sepp Straka pick. That's the third route I would have gone. It's good to know that you were going to probably take him, Joel, so I wouldn't have gotten him back to me to begin with. But there is a 50-1 right now out there on Sepp Straka. I, like Patrick, also took that wager. A lot of the metrics for me, and I don't run things – clearly at this point of the year, you're not going to be looking at as much current form. We've played one tournament. A lot of these guys haven't been in action. Never going to really look at a ton of that. And I also don't look at a lot of course history, though. Like, I'm trying to find players that are going to pop from a statistical perspective, names that I can find a little bit under the radar. And Straka's ownership is going to be boosted up because of that course history, because of that win last year. But what I liked the most from him came from that statistical profile. He was a top 5 upside play for me with the stats that included ranking second in weighted strokes gained total. He was third in one of the concoction categories that I ran, which is just, I talked about at the beginning, I think finding a fairway is important, but it was finding the fairway, short iron proximity, Bermuda putting. He was 6th in that short iron proximity plus tee to green, second in weighted scoring. I think as a whole, the industry's kind of sleeping on him this week. I see him drifting in the wrong direction in matchups. I see him drifting in the outright market. I think any of those prices are way too high. And if the reason we're using behind that is because he's the defending champion, I would probably find a different reason to try to fade him. I think Sepp is a good play this week.
Boom. All right. Sepp off the board. A really solid start. I will tell you, almost every pick taken since I've taken Bobby McIntyre has been someone I had to cross off my list. That's someone I would have taken with my next pick. So I'm scrambling here to rearrange my draft, which tells you two things. We're all kind of liking probably similar golfers, which is interesting. That's a good thing, and we're seeing it the same way. Maybe a bad thing in terms of ownership. So we'll see how the rest of this plays out. For my pivot here, I'm trying to be strategic if I think I need to take this guy with this pick. I don't think Spence will take him, so I'll wait one more round. I know he can't afford him.
I'm a wild card at this point. I might do
You are. You really are. All right. I don't think Spence would take this guy, but I don't want to risk it. So I'm going to, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to take Russell Henley. I'm not going to get too cute. I'm not going to get too cute. Let's get Russell Henley off the board. Russell Henley, again, is someone, if there's one, it's not even a weakness, but if there's one thing you might worry about in Russell Henley's game, it's his length, which shouldn't be a big issue here this week. If you take length away, Russell Henley pretty much does everything pretty well. He's accurate. He strikes the ball well. He's a great short game. At 9,600, I think there's plenty of upside here this week with Russell Henley. And he's a little bit cheaper than some of these other guys in a little bit 10K range, so you get a little bit of value on that front. He probably wouldn't have been the first pick I would have taken over some of the guys that just went before him, but I think it's a very small difference, so I'm happy to have landed Russell Henley here with my second pick. Spence, I can see you're disappointed. Talk to me.
Yeah, I talked about it last week with Russell Henley. Really liked him at that tournament. I think there's been an overcorrection that has occurred in the market at this point. Just like Harry Hall pops in a lot of those areas from the short iron proximity ranges, Henley does the same exact thing. I know he's not this prolific birdie maker. I think that's the downside that the public seems to be grasping and looking into right now when you have to get to 25, 30 under par to win this tournament. The thing in my model that I really liked is, so over a 2-year running perspective, he's 30th place in this field for birdie or better percentage. But when you condense it down to that under 125-yard zone, he jumps up into the second best player. That's behind the Harry Hall pick that we had talked about. There's an onslaught of those distances from that range. I really, really hate my lineup at this point because what is going to happen is it's going to be that very standard Scotty build. If it's not Siwoo, which I can't afford, it's going to be these golfers that are kind of stuck in this $8,000 section or a bunch of these 7s and lower. And I was trying really hard for it to be something unique. And I didn't really envision the possibility of this playing out to where Hall and Siwoo and Straka and Henley would all be off the board before I picked again. I was kind of okay with the idea of any of them. Henley, to me, was the hardest one to get to just because of the price tag, which also means that he is probably one of the better ones to get to with the Scotty lineup just because of how difficult it can be to get up there. But very disappointing start to this draft. And I'll let you guys talk about this for a second because I am going to need a split second here to figure out what route I'm actually going to go.
All right. Well, while we let Spencer buy some time here, Patrick, we'd love to get your take on Russell Henley this week.
Yeah, what T19 last week. Everything looked good. Struggled off the tee a little bit. Decent course history if we're talking in terms of his last appearance here. What, T14 in 2002? So again, that's tough. 3-year layoff from a venue. You really kind of, I guess, can't put too much weight into that recent form, right? 3 years. It's not like he's been playing here consistently as his venue. Ended the year as one of the best golfers. Played well in the fall. I mean, there's not much to not like about him, right? I guess the only concern here is, I mean, he's not a long hitter, right? So that's leans to the shorter courses. I guess his only concern is off the tee, right? Is that kind of your biggest concern with him going into this week?
Probably, yeah, I would agree. I think you nailed it too. I think the second part of it for DFS purposes is you might look at the birdies. Is he able to rack up enough birdies to give you a super high finish? I think he's pretty safe. So it's like, if you're thinking about a small tournament, a head-to-head cash contest, I think he's even higher on my board. I love him. If you're going after a GPP, I might discount him a little bit. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have upside. I just think he's probably more of a safer play than a guy who's an upside play.
So Henley is what, 96? Is there any sort of thing that swayed you from him, Burns, or Fitzpatrick, who are all in that range, who I guess you can argue all three of those guys are great picks this week? Fitz, with his recent form, now that his irons seem to be way better than they were last year, which you just didn't know if he was going to bring. It felt like his irons on the course at all. Like some of his approach game was just so bad some weeks. So, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, though, between Burns, Henley, and Fitz.
So I'll be honest with you, they all three were – I was weighing. They were all on my list. I was kind of weighing them all, looking through it. I would – I think it's all very close. It's not to say this was a landslide pick. I think they all – you could pick any of them, and I think you would have been okay with it. Fitz came last for me for the reason that I prefer Fitz on tougher courses. I don't think birdie fests are really the way I like playing him. He tends to excel in these more challenging courses. So if you want to get someone who's got to get to 25, 30 birdies, I'm usually not looking at Fitz. Doesn't mean he can't do it. That's just not the type of style of a tournament I want to play him at. And then Burns, it can go either way. I just think Henley's a little bit better than Burns, and that's kind of how he went out. But I wouldn't be – Burns can go out there and win the tournament this week. Burns is great. The putter gets hot this week. I think he's as much upside as anybody. I just prefer Henley personally. Yeah. There you have it. All right, Spence, your time is up. You got Scotty Scheffler. You got two more here. Where are you going from here?
All right, I'm going to pivot the direction I wanted to go of this boom or bust build and kind of just put myself in a little bit more of a safety zone here. So there were 11 golfers for me, which is a reasonable number that landed inside of the top 60 of all 7 statistical categories that I weighed. I'm going to go with one of those names here in Jacob Bridgman at $7,400. My model really likes him this week from a safety answer. Inside of the top 20 weighted strokes gained total, inside of the top 18 short iron proximity plus tee to green, inside of the top 25 for weighted scoring. We saw last week him come in 4th place. We saw a 21st place finish from him at this tournament last year. I think there's a lot to like about him at this price tag. The ownership is starting to climb ever so slightly. I've seen this start approaching the 10% range. I don't think we have reached a territory yet where there's a cause for concern with it, but it's just something to keep in mind specifically with a Scotty Scheffler lineup, because these are kind of these routes I keep talking about where Scheffler, Bridgman, and a lot of these names are just going to be very duped over and over again. So I will try to not give the prototypical lineup that everybody would expect. I will start with him as my first name. And then I really want this guy on my team. I made this joke earlier. I saw that Patrick liked it, and there's just too much of this out there with this golfer that I just don't want to lose him for some reason. It's one of those things where I put out a lot of content throughout the weekend, and I feel like the audience kind of knows where I'm going to go in particular spots. And even if the guy is 1% owned, I don't really want to get myself caught in a position to where like I can't figure out how to build this lineup properly. But there is a Daniel B out there. One of them I have sworn off from ever taking again. I will leave him to you guys. I do think he's a good pick this week. He was inside of the top 15 on my model. It's also inside of the top 15 on my model last week, which would have been a good pick if you had taken it. But I'm going to go in a different Daniel B route. I am going to go with Daniel Brown here at $6,700. 19th at the Sony Open. I would be lying if I said I wasn't concerned that my model, which is very driven on running things from a long-term perspective, is not caught in this route right now where it has taken one tournament from him and really pulled heavily there. I have a couple of more events that I was able to find data for him on, somebody that's coming from overseas. So I don't know if we know exactly what he's going to be on the PGA Tour at that point. When I did look into his profile last week, he was an overachiever from where he should have been based off of his ball striking. So that's at least something to keep in mind. But top 75-ish golfer in the world, all of those metrics that I ran, every single golfer that's entered the tournament this week has the ability to be much higher than projected if they only have one or two events. And the fact that Daniel Brown was the only golfer of all of those names to have to make me go in and actually regress his statistics out so I didn't have this like astronomically funky return from him makes me think that Daniel Brown might actually be a very good course fit here from what we've seen. So I think that this is leverage, if nothing else. I bet him at 400 to 1. I usually bet to win between 5 and 8 units. I bet to win 20 units on him this week. So I'm really swinging for the fence. So I like him here at this price tag. I think he's too cheap. I think his world ranking indicates what kind of golfer he is. And the data, at least for the 1 week that I have from him, really liked him. So I will take the other Daniel B, Daniel Brown.
Just to make sure I heard you right, did you say you bet 20 units on him
to win 20 units, which is a very small wager when somebody's 400 to 1.
Okay, all right, that's okay. I thought you said you bet 20 units. I was like, whoa, what did I miss? This might be something we need to all take a look at. Okay. All right, Daniel Brown off the board. A little bit of surprise pick there. Patrick, did you have Daniel Brown on your board this week?
I did not. I looked at that the range that Daniel Brown was in. I did another guy that jumped off the board to me who I was on last week, played well. So that's where I thought Spencer was going. But no, I did not.
Well, let me ask you real quick. Is it the same price or close to the same
The exact same price.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
So
all right.
Who knows? We'll have to see where this tournament ends up. But yeah, no, I had Berger circled on my short list here, but I did not have Daniel Brown. So credit to Spencer for that one. That is a name I did not see coming off the board. I had some inclination in the Discord that the name was floating around, but I didn't see that one coming.
Very quickly, I'm going to give a little bit of advice to you, Patrick. Joel is a master manipulator. He is trying to figure out what the next picks might be moving forward. Just be very cautious when you give him answers of something because Joel uses that. He puts it into his Rolodex in his brain, and he's going to file that away for later if he needs it.
I'm not even denying that. That's 100% true. I was trying to figure out how you were going
to. Yeah, no, that's fine. I have two different strategies right now of kind of what Spencer had before of, hey, he's got this path carved out, or just kind of burn it to the ground. Depending on your pick, it may just be full-blown chaos from here. So that pick could be out the window real quick. It could be yours.
Well, Patrick, you're new to the show. For any of you who have been a listener or tuned into the show, you already know who I'm taking. It is literally my guy. It's a guy I take. I've drafted this guy. I would probably guesstimate at least 80% of our shows. I take him every week. I can't believe he got to me here in the third round, and that's Andrew Novak. Continuing to get disrespected by the pricing. At this stage, Andrew Novak should be solidified in the 8K range. The fact that they've put him back not only in the 7K range, but in the lower 7K range is so disrespectful to the quality golfer he has become over the last year. If they don't start moving it up, I've got to take him every week. I actually consider taking him with my first pick just because of the value at 7,200. I don't get why they won't raise his price. He's clearly better than the other golfers in this range. He's proven that over the last 12 to 18 months. And I'm going to stick with my guns, and I'm going to go with Andrew Novak until they adjust his pricing accordingly. So thrilled to get Andrew Novak on the squad. We'll go to you, Spence. Any interest in Andrew Novak this week?
I don't know what his ownership is. I'm running it from one site right now. I would like to see where the data trickles in. I will say this, whether this is right, wrong, or whatever. I have a matchup against Andrew Novak this week. I took Johnny Kiefer against him.
I'm offended.
I understand that. I would anticipate you to be offended by that. You are the Andrew Novak guy. You are the Andrew Novak whisperer in a lot of these spots. You have taken him in situations where I was off of him and he has performed. If you look at the course history, it's going to be very bad. The one thing I will say to that, I would not use that as any reason why I was not going to play him. This is a funky tournament from year in, year out. I don't think past results are any indicator of what might happen in the future at this event. I just worry about the statistical profile for him inside of my sheet. I did see some of the sharper markets, whether that's like a bookmaker or a Pinnacle, have moved him in a direction where it seems like he has taken a couple of dollars. I assume that might be you, Joel, that might be firing on him in the outright market. And if it is, maybe that's where that's coming from. But I don't know. I didn't like the data from him this week. I am going to bypass it and look in a different direction. I don't know if Patrick has a different take to that. I guess we'll see. What do you think, Patrick?
No. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. Andrew Novak is not a name that I considered playing this week, but I don't blame Joel for thinking of that. I have guys that I play pretty much every week. I have a Fitzpatrick fetish, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I bet him more times than I even know what to do with. I bought Skechers because of how much I love this man here. Like, I am fully invested on Matt Fitzpatrick this week. I'm tempted to go again, but I may try to sneak him out sometimes, maybe later in the draft. But I still, every week, there's at least some sprinkle of money on Fitzpatrick, whether it's public, not public. He's my guy. I don't know where it got to. I think it was the braces that I fell in love with this man. And then the Skechers sponsorship, you parlayed those together, and he was just this unbelievable human being. So I love Fitzpatrick, and I don't blame you. We all have our guys, right? You just got to bet them.
Well, Patrick, you're on the clock with your third pick. You can afford him. Are you going to take Fitzpatrick with your third pick?
I'm not. I'm going to go a little bit older in the age range. I'm going to go with Alex Noren this week at 8,800. Weird year last year, right? Missed the majority of the season. We kind of saw him come back towards the end of the year and really finished in incredible form, right? T7, T3 at the Wyndham and the 3M. Went over to Europe and just caught fire. Won 2 of his 3 tournaments. Following that, struggled a little bit during the FedEx Cup fall swing. Went back to Europe, regained his form, followed it with a runner-up finish at the Hero. Good course history form, finishing 25th in 2024, T14 in 2020. The putting's there, the approach play is there. It's a shorter course this week. He doesn't have the distance, so he's not going to need it. I think Noren continues to stay hot this week, and I think at 8,800, it's a fairly decent price to get him at.
Boom, Alex Noren off the board. I think this is an interesting week for him because I think he does tend to do well in some of these birdie fest type of events. He can get hot there, and he could definitely be a sneaky play. I did think 8,800 was a bit steep for him, but which might keep his ownership low. So it could be a sneaky play from that angle. Audience, you are on the clock, and you have 2. I see some nominations coming in. It looks like 1 might be locked. You'll need 1 more. As we wait for that last pick to get in, Spence, I'd love to go to you. on Alex Noren this week.
Isn't it funny? And maybe this is one of those situations where the narrative around him may have just changed, and at a particular time when 10 years ago, 7 years ago, whenever it was, when he was actually like competing in a lot of these link style open championships that were difficult scoring, where I think the general public thought Noren was better on one of these non-birdie fests. But when you look at it in the numbers, and I've been saying this for a year plus now, anytime that I run a model that looks at strokes gain total at easy courses, strokes gain total at these short par 72s, Alex Noren consistently pops every single time in that area. And I think that as an industry, that is something that we need to be aware of, to where either false narratives sometimes get put into place or players can change what they actually do from a production standpoint. And Noren shows that over and over again. I agree a little bit with you, Joel, where I think the price tag is ever so slightly too high this week. With the ownership that we're seeing at 13%, I don't think I'm going to go down that direction, but I am not going to sit here and pretend like it's inconceivable for him to pop. There's too many of those metrics from a golfer that has kind of been putting himself in a position for a couple years now that at some point he's going to pop for a victory on the PGA Tour, and it may come on one of these birdie fests. I would not be shocked.
All right, there you have it. Alex Noren off the board. Great job, team audience. Ryan Gerard and JT Poston locked in. Interesting turn. You got some good value in here after a pretty strong first turn here when you got Ben Griffin and Siwoo. Patrick, I'd love to get your take. Are you interested in Gerard or Poston this week?
Poston was one that popped late for me. Gerard, it didn't really come across my radar in terms of the model that I built, but Poston right off a T7 at the RSM, putting's been more consistent in his last few tournaments, highlighted by his results. The approach play is there sometimes, but overall, he seems to be in pretty solid form this week. Great course history, which I think is why many people are kind of on him this week, right? T12, T11, T6, T25. But the issue, again, with Poston is that he doesn't necessarily have those consistent spike putting rounds that I think we've seen here and there, especially the past few tournaments. The approach play is kind of weaned off a little bit as well. And the course history, it's not as advantageous as it is on future venues, but I think he's not a terrible play this week. I'll go with that.
All right. There you have it. Kind of endorsed?
We'll that way. Question mark. Endorsed. Yeah. Endorsed question mark. Yeah.
I like it. Well, Patrick, I don't think based on your kind of statement there, I don't think you would have taken JT Poston here with your fourth pick. But without further ado, you're up here with your fourth pick. So who are you looking at here? Yeah,
I talked about him before in that 6,700 range. I'm just gonna go Lee Hodges. Right, you talk about a guy who's been in incredible form, T6, T4, and you're getting him at this price. It's almost one of the guys that I want to just lock down right now so that I do have room for those last two picks to kind of get crazy if I need to, or depending who's on the board. But with the recent form, I think he fits well with this course. It's hard not to just kind of staple him to a lineup and just use him as one of those last few picks just to kind of opens everything else up, it feels like, with the money I still have left to spend.
I will tell you, Patrick, I know you're new to the draft show. It didn't work out that way tonight. We went mainly higher-end guys first, but it is very much so a strategy to take your value plays early in this draft. If you like a guy, if there's a value play you're high on, some people, those 6K range guys can go in the first round if they're someone you're looking to prioritize. So I like the Lee Hodges pick. I think there's plenty of upside. I think he's someone that could surprise, and I think it was a good idea for you to get him off the board here. How about you, Spence? Are you interested in Lee Hodges this week?
Yeah, I like Lee Hodges a lot. He is technically, outside of Daniel Brown, the best golfer in my model, 7,200 or less this week. I liked him last week, as Patrick talked about, of him liking him. I like him again this week. He continues to pop for me in a lot of these spots. And when I ran my model to look for just projected tee to green for this course, or I should say for at least the main course that I'm modeling for, he was inside of the top 15 in that area. Like, that's kind of the high-end upside marks that you want to see if you are going to take a golfer down in this range. So the Bermuda putting is pretty on point with what we see with him with the rest of his putting on a different surface. I think he's a very good pick down in this range. I think at sub 5%, he's a name that is definitely worth considering.
Boom. All right. With my fourth pick here, I'm actually kind of making a last minute pivot because the guy I was going to take, I'm changing my mind on. I'm going to take Max McGreevy. Max McGreevy is a guy who we saw late last year kind of get hot, give you a lot of really strong results. He's someone down here in the 6K range, and I think, at least in terms of the betting odds, gives you some of the best odds to actually give you a top 10 or 20. If you're looking down here in the mid 6K range, McGreevy's only 4.5 to 1 to give you a top 20, which is crazy for the 6K range. So the books like him too. If you're looking for a value, I saw him for this range. He's about 6% ownership, which is high for the 6K range. But overall, that's not, I'm okay. I'm fine with playing someone at 6%, even in the 6K range. So that doesn't scare me off. Spence, I'd love to get your take. Are you interested in McGreevy this week?
I was probably going to go down that direction with it. To me, this is the opposite of the Andrew Novak answer, to where course history is going to look terrible for McGreevy. But if you actually dive into what he looks like from a statistical perspective in my model, inside of the top 36 in most of the upside categories that I'm looking at, really struck the ball last week well at the Sony Open, had a second and third before that. I know that's a weeks removed at this point with the restart here, but if people want to jump off of McGreevy because of that miscut at the Sony Open and because of the course history that you're going to get here, I think this is a really nice spot, as you talked about, Joel. There is true top 10 upside with him at this price tag, which is more than you can say about a lot of the golfers down in this range.
Boom. All right. Lock it in, Spence. You got two here. You're on the wheel. You need some value. It sounds like I had a steal, which I'm pretty happy about. How are you rounding out these next two picks?
So this is where game theory is going to be important here. So I am going to take with my first selection. There's a lot of different routes that I would have preferred to have gone here. All the names that were kind of off the board in this range, but I just talked about this category of looking at things from a projected tee to green only outlook. And I know John Rahm in the past has called this insert expletive putting contest. I don't actually think like it is as much that as it is perceived to the public here. Like that clickbait thing has kind of run wild. And I don't see that in a lot of the ways that the metrics end up working themselves out. It always will help to make putts, but there are a handful of golfers for me that are really high-end performers if you remove the flat stick from their hand. And one of those names, even though my model does have him as a negative value at this point, I think if you look at the leverage that you're able to create on him, it makes him a lot more playable. I actually bet him to win this tournament last year. He ended up missing the cut, which is probably where a little bit of this lack of ownership is going to come into play. But I'm going to take Kurt Kitayama at 8,700. Don't know if you guys had planned to go down that route. That's kind of right in the price range where you guys are, though. So I will take Kurt Kitayama first. And as I enter that in right now, I just want to see how much money I have. So I'll have $6,200. All right. I think at this point, Joel, and when we bring somebody back on, we talked about the punishment. I don't know if this is like some kinky 50 Shades of Grey thing. I'm trying to get punishment that is delivered to me next week, but I am going to a guy that I see at literally 0% ownership. And that's not even an exaggeration for the most part. I am going to take Kensei Hirata at $6,200, 24th last week at the Sony Open, a golfer that is going to have really high-end marks for me and really low-end marks. The accuracy looked brilliant from what I was able to see from him from one tournament. Some of the birdie-making potential, maybe not as crisp in that in one event. A lot of those bogey avoidance stats is what really helped him there, but scored on the par fives. You're going to have to score on the par fives here. He also delivered in enough areas, like from some of these proximity zones, from some of these short iron ranges, to where I don't know what he is at this particular moment, but I will tell you this that I know. He is 1,500 to 1 to win this tournament. I will not be sitting here and not having a ticket on him at 1,500 to 1 if my model even has any sort of an inclination that he might have success. So I'm going to play him in DraftKings. I don't know how much I love this particular build that I have. I think him and Daniel Brown together is a highly volatile route to try to go. But as I talked about, you get 3 rounds out of everybody. Put it into the comment section what you would like to see my punishment to be next week, though.
All right. Listen, I like you got to take a shot somewhere. I don't even know who that is, but I'm interested to see how that plays out for you. I here with my next pick was contemplating a high-end guy. There's a couple guys on my plate. I am not going to take Patrick Cantlay. I'm prefacing that because I read this somewhere online. I find it interesting. Because it's a pro-am, it's going to play really slow. I mean, they're playing with these regular guys. It's not going to be your normal, professional pacing. Is that a big advantage for Patrick Cantlay? Because he likes the slow pace. That ain't going to hurt him. We know that can be really frustrating for some of these other guys, but maybe Cantlay's like, hey, this is great. We're going to play slow, right down my alley. He's not bothered. Maybe that's why he's going to show up this week and have a great week. Also, it's in California. We know he likes the West Coast way. I think there's a lot of reasons that you can talk yourself into Cantlay. I just don't like him. I think I said at the beginning of the show, I don't like to play Cantlay, so I'm just not going to go there today. And I'm going to go with Ludwig Aubert. I just think he's a much better player. I think at the end of last year, he was hurt. And I think people got a little bit turned off because of the injury, and he wasn't quite playing as well. And I don't know, I'm not his doctor, but I'm assuming he's gotten healthy with a little bit of time off, and we're getting back, and we'll get the Ludwig that we're used to, which is, a top 10 guy on tour. And of course, like this, which should be easy, I think he has the ability to put together plenty of birdies with plenty of upside. Because of the way the drafts fell, I can afford him. It is hard to kind of cram a lot of these upper echelon guys in here, but I'm able to get it done here with Ludwig in the 5th round, which I'm pretty excited about. Love to get your take, Patrick, this week on Ludwig.
Yeah, Ludwig won last year in California. And it's funny you mentioned Cantlay, right? Like just betting on Cantlay, you've never clicked that button on DraftKings, whatever sportsbook that you use, and you're like, wow, that felt good. It's never a positive reaction to betting on Patrick Cantlay. I don't care who you are. I've never met anyone that's like, wow, that's a great bet this week. You just don't know with him, right? So I think that's the first step. But I do like Ludwig again. To your point, right? Hurt last year. I think that kind of dissuades some people. But if I had to pick him or Cantlay this week, I think he succeeds too. And we talked about him at the Farmers, right? He was in contention there before he had issues. So he's clearly shown an affinity for these California courses. Why not him this week?
Patrick, you have not been around Rotoballer long enough. I am the sicko that finds a reason to pet Patrick Cantlay and talk everybody into why it is one of the best values on the board. I'm not doing that this week, and I never actually win wagers when I bet on Patrick Cantlay, so maybe that means that he's actually going to perform well this week.
Who knows? Who knows with Patrick Cantlay, right? It's never a sure thing at this point, but like you said, California courses, Pete Dye, like he does rank well in those metrics, so maybe there is hope for him this week. I was looking at the chat too, and there's a funny one. Punishment should be that you can't draft Scheffler for any majors. Punishment should be you have to take 5 live guys in your draft.
Yeah.
In the majors, you have to take 5 live guys.
Well, it's
build your model around that.
I don't know if that'd be a punishment, because what ends up happening is we're so deprived of these live guys, we don't see them, that when we end up getting access to them at a major, they end up getting overdrafted in our drafts because we're like, oh, finally, we have access to John Rahm. We'll take it. And he's always goes first or second. And at least last year, he always disappointed.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's how it went. Well, Patrick, you're up here with your 4th. You got about $8K per pick left, which is plenty of money. Where are you going with your 5th pick?
Yeah, I talked about the strategy before. This is kind of how all these players I think I have outrights on so far. So at this point, I'm just going to kind of go off the board here. 7,600 Will Zalatoris. Played once this year over on the DP World Tour. The iron game was incredible. The overall game was great, right? But again, you go back to Willie Z, his arch nemesis of putting. struggled on the greens, but still managed to finish 15th in that tournament. You go back through his history at the Amex, right? T12 last year at this event. Not necessarily pretty good in most categories, but again, lost strokes putting, but still finished T12. So looking at his last few events, struggled putting, but I think the biggest issue is that if he can continue to roll that iron play into this week, he's shown that he can still have a great finish despite losing strokes on the green. Give me Willie Z at 7,600 this week. He said the second back surgery was the one that finally cured him. I think he's finally done with back surgeries. Let's hope. So why not at that price?
Listen, you certainly know there's upside. To me, Zalatoris is your like quintessential GPP play. Risky. He can end up, withdrawing and killing you. But he'll also probably be lower owned in the 7K range with fewer guys that have top 10 upside. So if you want to go out there and swing for the fences, go for a GPP, he's the type of guy you want to kind of take a risk on. So I like it. I think it's an interesting way to get different here late in the draft. Spence, well, before we get to you, Spence, audience, you have two. I see a few nominations in, so let's keep them going to lock in those two picks to finish off the audience squad, about 7,600 per pick. But Spence, while we wait, Will Zalatoris, is he on your radar for this week?
I think he's a high upside player that has historically fit courses like this very well. Patrick talked about the lack of the putter. If you remove that from the mix, and my model's not one that typically loves Zalatoris in a lot of spots, but really likes him clearly in those spots where you can remove the putter from it. And I think if you look at the course history, like if we knew he was coming into this year of what he had been in the past at this price tag, he would be an astronomically high price stone, 12th, 34th, 36th, 6th in his 4 attempts at this tournament. I think it's this high upside, very low floor play that in a GPP contest and in some of these large field entry tournaments, you're swinging for the fence on somebody that's going to probably be sub 5%. So I'm never going to really argue against that. And I think if you're just comparing him to a name like, this, Joel, like I'm a really big Wyndham Clark guy. I would rather probably bet on the upside of Zalatoris than I would on taking Wyndham Clark this week. I know Clark has some of that course history a little bit himself there, but I think Zalatoris is intriguing.
Interesting. Will Zalatoris, listen, he's so young. I feel like the comeback is going to happen. And when it does, you're not going to see him at 7,600 again. So you want to be early. This could be the week to roll the dice. I like it. All right, team audience. Patrick Rogers locked in. And it looks like Daniel Berger is the second pick. Courtney, I'll let you confirm that, but that's how it looks to me. I think this is if that is the case, I think this is a really solid draft by team audience. I think the audience squad could win it. Team audience has a really balanced squad, top to bottom. They have a lot of upside. I think team audience did a great job here. Spence, what about you? Are you interested in Rogers and Berger? And what do you think of the audience draft as a whole?
I always find a reason to be interested in Daniel Berger, even when I'm trying not to be. As I kind of said, even when we talked about him, when I was doing the whole Daniel Brown spiel that I had, Berger's a top 15 player for me this tournament inside of my model. That's not an abnormal result that you're going to get, but for that lineup to start Griffin, Siwoo, and end with Berger, who I really thought Berger, probably with either you or I, Joel, I feel like one of the two of us drafts him quite frequently in these drafts. For him to produce the Sunday that he did and to make it to the very last pick there at the 601 for the audience, I didn't really envision him being around that late. And there was a possibility, kind of just for the humor of having Daniel Brown and Daniel Berger, that I was going to go in that route for a second. I decided to go with Kitayama instead. I think he has a little bit more upside at the end of the day, even if the floor might be lower. But I like the Daniel Berger pick a lot.
I don't know if it'll score more DFS points, but I will say the Berger Brown connection does sound a lot better than the Brown Kitayama connection. So just in terms of aesthetics and sound, I prefer that. But you missed out. Team Audience got him. Team Audience did a great job this week. Hey, Audience, welcome back. You guys came in hot in the new year with a great draft. We appreciate you, but we still have a draft to round out. Patrick, you get like Zalatoris off the board with 8,400 left. You got one pick to go. Who are you looking at with your last pick?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Minwoo Lee. Shockingly, I was between the burn all down strategy, excuse me, would have been Ricky Fowler in this pick, right? You could still afford him, but I'm not gonna do that. Fowler hasn't played this year, which gives me some concern. Minwoo Lee has played twice over on the DP World Tour, back at his homeland of Australia. T5, T14. Good course history back in 2024, where he finished T21. In that start in 2024, lost strokes on the green and lost strokes on approach play. But looking at his last few tournaments, the approach play has been there some weeks. This is kind of one of those plays where you're just hoping that the putter somehow gets hot. We've seen these spike performances from him in the past. Look at the Texas Children's, gained over 2 strokes in that tournament on the green. If the putter flashes, I think he's some value, especially at this mark.
Oh. All right, Min Woo off the board here at the last pick. To round out my draft, I'm going to take Mac Meisner. He's another guy down here in the 6K range that I think has upside. If you just look at how he finished the year last year, very safe. He gave you a lot of top 30s. From October on, he gave you T14, T27, T27, T18. Even last week in Hawaii, he gave you a T40, but he was striking the ball well. I think if he rolls in a few more punts, a top 30 finish in the 6K range here this week is very reasonable here for Mac Miser. So if you're looking to go in the 6K range, I think he's a guy that has enough upside where you can round out a squad, especially if you're looking at Scheffler or guys like that up top to balance out your roster. Spence, would love your take on Meisner and then how you rounding out this draft.
I know Patrick and I bet Mac Meisner last week. We both had him in the outright market. I believe, Patrick, you also had him in the placement market.
I believe so. I'd have to check back to the roundtable article, but I believe I had him in the placement market as well.
I did as well. I honestly, look, it was a little disappointing from him. I don't think it was so disappointing that I'm going to remove him. He's one of the better values that I have in the $6,000 section. Until that price gets corrected, I'm going to probably consistently keep playing him. I'll give my last pick right now. I can't afford this golfer. I'm nowhere in this range. I just want to give one player that I think is going to go massively under the radar this week. And I'm probably, honestly, according to the chat at least, I'm probably not allowed to mention this golfer anymore because I feel like every single time I do, he implodes on himself. But the best leverage play that I have, $8,000 and up, would technically be Davis Thompson at sub 5%. I think if you're looking to swing for the fences in one of these large field GPP contests, the floor is really low for Davis Thompson, but the ceiling, kind of like a Minwoo Lee, it's the same thought process there where the ceiling is going to be much higher. Plus, look at the course history for Davis Thompson. He does have 2 top 21 finishes. So I just wanted that name to be mentioned because that was another route that I had considered just to make a Scheffler lineup different if I was trying to go in that direction. But to round this out, I have kind of turned this in at the very end to a team no putt strategy. I'm going to take Doug Gim at 6,800. I probably would have rather have preferred Max McGreevy if I could have gotten him in this spot. I considered Bud Cauley. I think Bud Cauley makes a lot of sense if you want to play Cauley. His prices always seem to be a little too low, but I'll bet on the ball striking acumen from Doug Gim. This is a very volatile lineup that I have. So it's definitely one of those lineups that you look on Sunday and it's like, wow, this lineup actually top 10 a large field GPP. Or it's like, wow, this lineup got 1 through the cut of Scotty Scheffler and everybody else missed.
All right, there you have it. It is rounded out. We will have a winner, our first winner in 2026, but we will crown a king of the draft. Do us a favor. Let us know who you think is going to win. What lineup do you like most? Put your vote in. We will track it. We'll report back next week. Crown the king of the draft, and we will do it all again. But we're not done yet. Before we get everyone out of here, we're going to do each of our bets of the week. Spence, we'll start with you. Is there a bet of the week that you are prioritizing?
I will add this. If you look at Patrick's name, he wants the world to know that he has a Fitzpatrick fetish. I may be the one that added that to the bottom of his name there, but let that just be known that this is a full-blown Fitzpatrick fetish that he has.
Guilty.
For my favorite pick, I'm going to be very aggressive in some of these markets where I'm going to be playing Daniel Brown and Kensei Harada, whether that's to make the cut, top 40, top 20s. But if you want something that's a little bit more tangible, something that's a little bit safer out there, part of me, Joel, wants to say Kiefer over Novak. You know what? For the sake of the show, let's say Kiefer over Novak. I was going to say Doug Gim over William Meow, but I think it's better content to actually just oppose you on that one and say Kiefer.
All right, I'm laying down the hammer then. You proposed it. I'm coming and implementing it. You said you wanted a punishment on the show. We haven't fully implemented the punishment wheel, but we will do a punishment bet. I'll take Novak. I don't even know who. Do you have Kiefer?
Yeah.
Who? This guy sounds like a pothead or something. I don't know that. Fine. You have Kiefer. I'll take Novak. Loser has a punishment next week that will be decided by the audience. Audience, you come in. I'll let Courtney, you can be captain of this punishment. Next week, come into the chat. You let us know what you guys want the punishment to be. It's got to be draft related. Obviously, we're not doing anything crazy, but put some ideas in the chat. If we like it, we'll take it. If we don't like it, I'll take my own punishment because I'm going to win. I'm just assuming I've already won.
I'm just going to throw this out there very quickly just so we have the rules in place and we're not sitting here on Tuesday of next week and having to decipher what we're doing. If the team comes in last and also is the one that loses the bet, is it a double punishment that's going to ensue?
Ooh. Okay, I'll accept your term.
Double punishment. There should be. I'm at this rate. I'm going to have no team to draft next week.
All right, Patrick, let's go for you. You're the man yourself. Like I said earlier, Patrick, we appreciate you coming on this week. But Patrick is a master of betting on these golf tournaments. If you are not following Patrick already, make sure you give him a follow at Gator Betting. If you're following Patrick, you are going to win more bets this year. He is a master at it. Patrick, what is one bet you are really teeing up for this week?
Yeah, so Spencer, I'll give you a little, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm going to do it regardless. So Spencer sends out this Google Excel sheet every week for the betting roundtable where everyone kind of puts in their information. And honestly, as a bettor, it's super helpful to see. As a joke, for my best bet this week, I put in Michael Block to miss the cut at minus 5,000. I don't think that's going to be given out in terms of a premium pick. I don't think that's what people are paying for. So that's not going to be my best bet this week in terms of some integrity on the show. I have two, actually, maybe even three. I'm going to the top 20 market. Sam Burns plus 110 to finish inside the top 20. There's certain tournaments of the year where you kind of look at the top of the board and some of these guys start to fall off very quickly in terms of this T20 pricing, right? Maybe the top 10 guys are in that negative number. This is one of those tournaments that I think the books aren't necessarily so sure on given the pricing of the past winners. Burns, I think, is the fifth favorite or around there, maybe even lower. You're getting him at plus 110 to land top 20. He's got great course history, recent form. At plus money, it's not this flashy number. It's not 5-1. It's not 6-1, whatever you want. But plus 110, I think Burns has a great chance of finishing inside the top 20 this week, and that includes ties as well.
I love that pick. I probably what I'll tell, and I am for my pick. I am sticking in the top 20 market. I like going that route. I think that's a nice route to go. Someone you like for the week, they can give you a good finish. But mine's gonna be my first pick. There's a reason I took him first. I love Robert McIntyre. I love the way he's playing. To get him top 20, I think he's shown he's been playing really consistent golf. I think he's going to get you that top 20 at plus 135. At least that's what it is on DraftKings. I think that's just a really good number for him to get into the top 20. So that's my bet of the week. That's a wrap for tonight. A huge thank you to Patrick for coming on and drafting with us tonight. We are so stoked to be back for the 2026 season, and we're really excited to be on Rotoballer. It's really good right now in 2026. Rotoballer is bringing the A+ content to the golf world. We really up their game. It's gonna. I mean, we've always gotten Spencer's content. You always know when you go follow Spencer, you're gonna have a good week. You're gonna make some money, and Spencer's bulking up the team. Spencer, why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about what you got going on this year at the Rotoballer Golf team?
Yeah, we have so many great additions and pieces that we've added that. I'm very thankful to the ownership of Rotoballer that they have allowed me to kind of build this team into a position to where we do have really heavy hitters. And Joel, you are one of those pieces up by adding this show to the mix where it was important for me that we got this show on the air and we got it over at Rotoballer. We've talked about it for a really long time. Patrick is the new hire that we have this year. Patrick is, I have said this about maybe 2 or 3 people in the space as they were coming in over the last couple of years. I'm going to say this about Patrick. Patrick is an absolute superstar. If you read his content, you are going to get smarter. He will make you a better. He's also an incredible writer. His writing quality is top notch to the very nth degree of what you're able to put out there. The free piece that he has out there is one of the best digestible, hard-hitting, informative, just from top to bottom of what that week's going to be. He also has the premium article that I'll let him talk about, Patrick's picks, where he does dive a little bit more into the selections he makes. And Patrick, and I will say this, and I know Rotoballer will not necessarily be thrilled with me putting this out, but like Patrick is a very nice guy. If you want to ask him some questions, I don't know if he can dive into every single pick that's in those pieces, but Patrick is going to be around if you ever want to ask him anything. We would love for you to join what we have going on this year. Ian McNeil, he has a couple pieces. There's a premium piece that we turned from free to premium. That's the course routing that he has his picks. He also has the power rankings that he's taken over. That's done a lot of great success early on. Matt Miller is doing a long shot bets piece. All of us are over in the Discord channel. You have Joe Nicely, Zach Thompson, Todd McGill. I'm really proud of what we have. I'll let Patrick talk a little bit about that premium piece that he does. Please shout out the code. Patrick and I have joked about this. I think I've asked in some fashion, whether it's to him or to Alex Roberts, who's the owner of Rotoballer, what is Patrick's code so I can include it in the article like 1,000 times at this point. I've told Patrick, please check me into an insane asylum if I can't figure it out at this rate. I know what it is. I will let Patrick tell you what it is, though, but just very honored to have this show on the network. Very honored for anybody who does tune into us. And Patrick, I'll give you the floor to tell everybody about everything that you're doing.
Yeah, no. So once a week is the massive article diving into pretty much everything you could possibly need to know about each tournament. So that's kind of the biggest thing that I want to pump. It's free content. Please go check that out. Any feedback, positive, negative, whatever you got, I'll take to kind of keep trying to improve that article. I'm not sure how much more I can feasibly add to that article. I think the editors behind the scenes are already not too pleased because they're like, relax, like we're good. Like it's a golf tournament. We're good. We don't need to know everything about every single piece of grass out there. So if there's something you want me to add, I will do my best, but I'm always happy to chat. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join the Discord on the Rotoballer site. Happy to help over there as well. But in terms of the premium article, it is a massive article that I dive into every single one of my picks. It's there on the premium site. You can use code GATOR to get 30% off, I believe, right now is the deal we're running.
That's correct.
So 30% off, and you get access to all that. And it's not just me. There's so many great writers over there. So really a solid squad heading into the season. It's only week 2, so you're going to get your money's worth this season.
Yeah, I just want to very quickly, Joel, I know we've run this a little bit longer than we normally do. I appreciate everybody who has stayed with us we started a couple minutes late, but about an hour and a half here. All the writers this year are under the same premium program. That is not something that has happened in years past. It used to be myself and everybody else, and that is not how I wanted the site to be structured. It is very important to me that all of our writers from top to bottom, if there is talent, if there's skill, that everybody gets equal recognition from the entire slate. And, if your work is good, it's going to show. And that was one of the big things I asked for, that all of the work would show up in one area. And you will get, for 30% off, use the code GATOR. You will get all of the work that we have from every single writer, every piece of information, my model, all the round tables, everything that we have. So we really appreciate everybody who has signed up currently. I know we've gotten a lot of traffic early in the year, and we really hope that if you have not so far, that you will consider signing up.
It's a really simple game plan this season. You sign up for Rotoballer, you get all the information, you win some bets, you have a lot of money, you reinvest, you get rich. That's what we're doing in 2026. And when it's all said and done, that
was easy.
You hit the easy button. Good luck this week, people. We'll be back next week. We're crowning the king of the draft, and we'll do it all over again.